Why are we seeing so many people use it for cosmetic reasons? Why are we seeing so many celebrities use them?
They're not a cosmetic drug. They're not for someone who wants to get beach body ready. They're definitely not for people who would be classed as a healthy BMI. You know, they're not licensed for this group of people, and it can be dangerous.
I've been seeing videos on TikTok that's like people pointing out celebrities doing their big performances and not maybe being able to move just as much or have as much energy, and like pointing to potential muscle loss.
Using these in an unregulated way without really good lifestyle support, I think has significant potential for loss of lean mass, which then increases our risk of sarcopenia and frailty and osteoporosis as we age. And I think we're going to see a big epidemic of that in 15, 20 years.
How much do we know about the long-term effects of these?
At these higher doses, we don't know that much. And that's, I think, why myself and Courtney are both quite concerned about things like muscle loss, because that is something that will affect you in later life.
Yeah, it's a big, huge human experiment, kind of.
I feel like everyone knows someone on weight loss drugs at the moment. Maybe you've even thought about it yourself. Drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro are talked about as revolutionary, but also definitely as controversial. Some people say they're life-saving, other people say they're fueling this toxic return to thinness. I really want to know what exactly they're doing to our bodies, to our relationships, and even how we're treated in society. So we asked you for your biggest questions through a call out on the Guardian website and our YouTube channels. And today I'm going to be putting those questions to two brilliant doctors. Dr. Jack Mosley, a UK-based GP who's just released the book Food Noise, and Dr. Courtney Younglove, a US-based obesity and women's health specialist. Courtney, your name, what a great name. When I saw your name, I was like, Courtney Younglove.
Yeah.
I feel like you maybe should write a novel or something.
I'm working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
It was actually much more appropriate when I was an obstetrician and I delivered babies. You know?
Yeah, true.
A good name for that.
So I guess I want to start with the basics. What exactly are these weight loss drugs, and how exactly do they work in the body? Jack, maybe you want to start?
Sure. So the weight loss drugs they're the GLP-1 agonists. That's the class of drugs. These mimic the naturally occurring gut hormones, and they work in several ways. I'm just going to talk about three key organs that they work on. So firstly, the pancreas, and that's why they were originally used to treat type 2 diabetes, which they've been used to treat for the last 20 years. Secondly, the gut, they work by slowing down the gut, and they slow the emptying of the stomach. And thirdly, and I think this is why they're so interesting in terms of they're used in the weight loss space, is that they act directly on the brain. So they reduce your appetite, essentially reduce your appetite, but they also appear to reduce your cravings.
Okay, so they work, you kind of explained how they work in different organs. The way that they make people lose weight, they essentially force people into a calorie deficit, would you say? Is that kind of what it is?
I think we're still learning. I mean, there was a recent study that just came out in rats that had a calorie equivalent chow meal that the rats got, but some of them got a GLP-1, and the rats that were getting a GLP-1 lost more adipose tissue, even though they were on the same calorie deficit. So I think there's probably a lot more happening that we aren't sure about. I mean, it's probably that it's pulling some of the energy out of the fat cells and mobilizing it. I think it's a lot more complex than just making us eat less. I do.
Okay, interesting. That's good to know, because I think a lot of the questions we had, I think that was the understanding, that it was just, just making you eat less, essentially. And obviously these drugs have exploded in popularity in the last couple of years, but they've been around for over 20 years treating diabetes. How do you feel about this Wild West?
I mean, I feel like it's doing a lot of people a disservice. I think a lot of people are getting medications in an unregulated fashion. They're not telling their primaries that they're on these medications, which increases the risk of drug-drug interactions. I think there's a lot of people, I know a lot of people in my social world that are misusing them to lose 10 pounds for a wedding.
Definitely online, on TikTok, on everything, we're seeing so many celebs who are already so slim using it. Who are these designed for? Who are they most appropriate for? And who are they not for?
The weight loss drugs are they're for people who are living with obesity and obesity-related diseases, from high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, heart disease, all these sorts of chronic metabolically linked diseases. And for people who have tried, other avenues, I think a lot of people have tried hard to lose weight. And I think in the food environment we live in, where there's just addictive processed junk foods everywhere, I understand it's very difficult. For instance, someone with pre-diabetes, that these drugs can be life-changing, and they do have the potential to reduce a lot of these illnesses and kind of increase someone's happy, healthy life. For the people they're not for they're not a cosmetic drug. They're not for someone who wants to get beach body ready, who wants to lose a few kilos for a wedding, those sorts of things. And I think the other really big concern of mine actually is the potential for abuse, especially with how they're regulated at the moment. They're definitely not for people who would be classed as a healthy BMI, because they are not tested on this sort of people, really, especially, they're not licensed for this group of people, and it can be dangerous and potentially exacerbate eating disorders.
So if this is who it's for and this is who it's not for, why are we seeing so many people use it for cosmetic reasons? Why are we seeing so many celebrities use them?
Because I think we are so conditioned that beauty is thinness, and it's just been such a long narrative, especially for women, that it becomes an ideal that people are seeking. And we were just starting to get away from it. I think, this kind of body positivity and strength that you saw muscular women on magazine covers, and I feel like we are sliding backwards, that this is now an easier to attain thing. So let's make it the ideal female body again.
It does feel like a slipping back of that, for sure.
It does.
Go on, Jack.
Yeah, I think there is so much stigma around obesity, and with these weight loss drugs, a lot of people who are using them for maybe cosmetic reasons, who are of, like I say, healthy BMI already, some of their friends may look at them and think, oh, I want to do that as well. And I think there is a lot of danger to these drugs. There's a lot of goods, but there are concerns about how they could be used. And I think we need to be really careful about that.
Yeah. I think our value as women is often determined by our looks. And a big part of that is the size. I mean, the way even, the medical professionals talk about it, the way family members do. If, you think if somebody loses weight, you go, oh, you look great. I mean, that becomes the words, not you look smaller, or boy, you must be healthier. It becomes you look this.
Yeah. Because I guess, are we risking confusion between weight loss and health? I guess that speaks to what you were saying about nutrition. Just because some people are lighter or smaller doesn't mean they're healthier, does it? Right.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think the way we look at it is that, obesity is a very common outcome of disrupted mitochondrial function, disrupted, our ability to process energy and partition energy, and that entire biochemical process that the body's been doing for millions of years. When that gets disrupted, a lot of people get obesity, but some don't. So people just get diabetes, or they just get heart disease, or they just get Alzheimer's, or they just get, fatty liver disease. And we tend to look at it like obesity is the problem, but it's just a very common manifestation of a bigger problem.
And on top of that, some people, I'm concerned that they may get addicted to that weight loss, and people say, oh, you look great, you've lost a few kilos, and then you keep losing more and more, and that could be something that is concerning in the future.
I mean, how do we protect people with eating disorders?
I know. I don't know. I mean, if you can get it from an online source with a questionnaire, I don't know that you can protect people from it. I mean, it's just terrifying.
And this is why we probably do need a bit more regulation around how it is provided, with at least, at the bare minimum, an initial consultation with a clinician, and potential, screening questions for people who might be at risk of eating disorders already. But there's a lot we don't know about these weight loss drugs, and I think we need to be careful about how we use them in the future. Yeah.
So I've been seeing videos on TikTok that's like people pointing out celebrities maybe on stage doing their big performances and not maybe being able to move just as much or have as much energy, and like pointing to potential muscle loss.
I mean, we watch all of our patients monthly using a body composition device to make sure we're not losing lean mass. But we tend to be the exception to the rule in that, and using these in an unregulated way without really good lifestyle support, I think has significant potential for loss of lean mass, which then increases our risk of sarcopenia and frailty and osteoporosis as we age. And I think we're going to see a big epidemic of that in 15, 20 years from these patients using this in an unregulated way. And what we know is it's very hard to, especially for women who tend to lose more weight on these drugs than men, it's hard for women to build muscle, especially as we age. And so maintaining what we have is so vital. And it's just, I think it's just not talked about enough. Or it's talked about as not a worry. You know, I think it's very concerning when you look at what happens to women as we age. I mean, we see it in our chronic dieters. I mean, I think it's also just inappropriate rapid weight loss causes muscle loss, even if it's a lifestyle intervention, even if it's an older drug. And we see these, you know, these women that have been chronic dieters that have gained and lost the same 40 pounds, 10, 12 times, and their body fat percentage is so high by the time we see them that they just don't have much lean mass at all to give. And to me, those are my scariest patients is, you're 61 years old, you want to lose 20 pounds because that you feel like will change your life, but you have very little lean mass to begin with because of this chronic dieting. And it's just, it's just hard.
Yeah. So the studies show with these weight loss drugs, you lose between 25 to 40% of the body weight is lean body mass. And, a main component of that is muscle. And like you said, there's so many issues with down the road with frailty, and muscle is so important for longevity and your metabolism. It soaks up a lot of the sugar. One of the other things I'm somewhat concerned about is things like malnutrition, because I think we're overfed but undernourished. I think so. It's half the people with obesity who are living with obesity already have some micronutrient deficiency. So this could really exacerbate that problem. I think people are just approaching these medications like a magic fix, and using them as the sledgehammer, but they really do need to have a think about these drugs more as like powerful weight loss drugs. And really it's so important to change things like what you eat, but also your lifestyle, so ensuring you exercise, and also even thinking about things like resistance training,
to kind of counteract the muscle loss, I guess.
That's exactly it.
And I think people see it as a lot of people see it as I don't have to do that part anymore, or that thing didn't work, that lifestyle thing didn't work. So now I'm just going to, I mean, I get it, right? Because lifestyle interventions are really difficult. And most people that struggle with obesity have tried lifestyle interventions multiple times. And so I think you get a sigh of relief from a lot of people of, oh, now I don't have to worry about this anymore. I'm my cognitive load for that is over. Now I'm just going to take this drug, which is a mistake, but it's exhaustion, I think, on a lot of people's part. And I see, why you would want to do that and just feel like it's one or the other. And I like this one better. It's just sad. Yeah.
I guess it kind of does. Do you think it loses its miracle status a bit when you also have to eat well and exercise and do all the things that you have to do anyway?
It's socially very normal to have excess weight. It's socially and culturally very normal to eat poorly. It's culturally and socially very normal to have a sedentary lifestyle, to, overstress and undersleep and all of those things. And so trying to make those shifts can be really difficult. And we always describe it as like these anti-obesity medications, all of them can almost create a bubble that pushes those things away for a while and lets you kind of build up some armor.
Right.
It's sometimes a lot easier to implement a lifestyle modification plan when you have the headspace, when the food noise is quieter, when the hunger hormones are subdued, you can do the things that you want to do without so much friction. So I think they're a beautiful combination.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and that's why I like to think of these weight loss medications like these kind of noise cancelling headphones that you can put on and you can go about your day. You can ignore your cravings and that call to eat or overeat. But I think when you take them off, like I say, that food noise does come back. When they do stop the medications, we know even from the studies that 2/3 of that weight does come back within the first year. So it is so important to use these drugs as an opportunity to learn new habits and new healthy habits as well.
Right. We had a lot of questions about that, the off-ramp. Is this something people should stay on forever, or how do they get off them? How do they get off them? What's the right way to do that?
I think the intention should be to either come off these drugs or alternatively get down to a lower maintenance dose. And I think that's something that might happen a bit more in the future. I think at the moment, a lot of people, they're on this dose, potentially at a very high dose with the online pharmacies, and then they're just stopped suddenly. Now, this isn't dangerous, but I think it is more likely to lead to this rebound of your food noises, like the siren's call of processed junk foods returns.
Absolutely. And obviously, naturally, I'm sure you get so many questions about this, but about people are worried about the side effects of these drugs. What are the main side effects that people get, and how much can people trust the testing that's being done on these?
I mean, all of our anti-obesity medications have side effects related to the gut, basically. I mean, you're manipulating gut hormones, so you do get, with all of them, typically some people get constipation, some people get diarrhea. A lot of people get nausea with these drugs because of that delayed gastric emptying. I mean, it's when food sits in the stomach longer, it can be disruptive. People can get reflux, they can get burps, most of the side effects will abate over time, but not everyone, and which is why we tend to start very low, and we tend to titrate up very, very slowly.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how much do we know about the long-term effects of these?
At these higher doses, we don't know that much, and that's, I think, why myself and Courtney are both quite concerned about things like muscle loss, because that is something that will affect you in later life when you're trying to get out of a chair and you want to live an independent and healthy life in your later years. So I think we know quite a lot about these drugs because they've been around for 20 years, but these are at a much lower diabetic dose. So really, on such a large scale, we don't really know the effects.
Yeah, it's a big, huge human experiment, kind of.
Yeah. It seems that way for sure. Another thing that came up quite a lot was mental health, and there's kind of two sides to it. Obviously, food is one of the greatest joys in life. What happens when that joy disappears because you don't want to eat and you kind of not much of an appetite?
I think that's where it gets really complex, right? Because people have obesity for different reasons, and there's different drivers to eat. And if you're eating for pleasure and you take that drive away, do you diminish your pleasure? If you get pleasure from other things and you really can slide that over into a different track and you're okay, then it's a different story. And if eating is a coping mechanism for emotions, and then you can't eat very much, so your coping mechanism has been taken away, I think you can have repercussions there. So I think it's very nuanced. This is not simply just calories in and reduce calories and people all get better.
Yeah.
And I think these drugs are going to become more and more widespread as they become, cheaper and more available. So we'll have to see kind of what happens with how people may approach eating in a different way. Even, when they go out for a meal, most people on these medications are not going to be able to finish a full meal. They may get a starter. Then will they get an Ozempic sized portion? So I think.
Right, that's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of speculating here, really, but I
wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, but in terms of a lot of even our kind of cultural and social identities, like you say, are tied to eating. We all sit around a dinner table and eat with our family or friends, all sorts of things. So it could, it does have the potential to impact that.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously there's what we've touched on a bit is, a lot of people comfort eat or emotional eat. And there's a lot of there's a huge psychological side to overeating and obesity. Obviously, these drugs are not going to do anything for that. Or maybe I'm wrong, maybe they will. But do they? And what do you recommend for addressing that side of things if people are going to go on these?
I mean, so having excess weight, and especially the process of actively gaining weight, increases inflammation, which can have detrimental effects on mental health. So, I mean, I think there's going to be a push-pull in some people. I mean, I think, all the metabolic active compounds that are running through the body when a person is metabolically unhealthy or they're gaining weight. I mean, if we can tamper that down, you might see improvements in a lot of people with their mental health because you're fixing some biochemistry. But yeah, you might see, I mean, it's going to be different for all people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at things like type 2 diabetes, that doubles your risk of depression. Poor metabolic health can. Yeah, it's quite. It's not a well-known fact, really.
What? Having type 2 diabetes doubles your risk of depression.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, we've been speaking about a lot of the dangers, but there's lots of reports that seem to come out that these weight loss drugs can have other benefits, like with cancer or dementia, or, you keep reading these articles about that it actually improves heart disease or whatever. Is any of that got any real basis?
Oh, yeah. I think it has a lot of basis. I think it goes back to when I was talking about kind of this common, inflammation and insulin resistance drive a lot of these different diseases. And so if you're attacking one of them, you're probably getting some healing downstream. I mean, I think, in medicine, we're calling, Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes a lot of times, like it's insulin resistance of the brain. So if you can fix some of the insulin resistance problem, does the brain heal? Do the blood vessels heal a little bit? Like, the body's pretty clever. And so if you can take away some of the soup of inflammation out, can other body systems heal themselves?
Wow. So these could be being used in the future for a lot more than just diabetes or weight loss.
Yeah. I think a lot of the impact is from their ability to reduce your weight over time. The drug companies at the moment are insinuating, and it's still quite early in the research, whether there is a impact on reducing inflammation without the weight loss. I think it's quite early, and I think the vast majority of the impact will be through improving your metabolic health by losing weight.
But if you look at bariatric surgical procedures, a lot of these comorbidities get better there. So I don't, how much of it is a drug effect and how much it is, the weight coming off.
What do you think is a key misunderstanding around weight loss drugs that a lot of people have?
I mean, I would say the one I hear the most is that we're going to cure obesity with these drugs, which I think is pie in the sky thinking. But, if we can get a 15% weight loss with a lifestyle intervention and long-term drug use, that's still going to leave a lot of people with obesity. I mean, if you have a body mass index of 45 and you lose 15% of your body weight, you're still stuck with a BMI of 38. I mean, it's not curative. And so I think that thinking can be detrimental of, I don't need to do anything else because I'll just do that thing someday. So I think, yes, they're lovely tools, but we can't just stay so laser focused on that at the expense of all else, that it's not a magic lifeboat that's going to save humanity.
Okay, yeah, that's really good to hear. Yeah. Jack, what about you? Key misunderstanding you think people have?
Yeah, I think kind of linked to that is just the fact that a lot of people do just see these drugs as almost like a vitamin or a magic fix, and this drug that they can take and just go along with their lives and not change anything about their lifestyle. But it's more important than ever to change your lifestyle if you are taking these medications. If you do want to lose more fat and retain more muscle and retain more vital nutrients. So that is just so important.
And final thought, I mean, for people watching who might, their family member might be on it, might be thinking about it, they might think it's a good thing, or they might have just heard of it and be a bit worried. I guess what's one thing you want them to understand?
I would say, it's a powerful medication. I think you need to work with somebody that understands the medication, understands the disease state, understands the nuances of the process of fat loss instead of just weight loss, that really can kind of wrap their arms around you and take care of you as a whole person instead of just prescribing something at the lowest cost point possible. I think it's very important to get comprehensive care.
Guys, thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation. I feel like we should do so many of these. I feel like there's so much knowledge in there.
Yeah, thanks.